TV.
That one's bright, man.
One moment.
Is that part of the number system?
5, 4, 3.
What's up, everybody? What would Bubba say? We are back. I know it's been like a couple of weeks because of holidays and all sorts of stuff, but we're back. We're happy to be here. What would Bubba say? The show about people, and today we have an amazing, amazing show. We have our guest Brenden Borrowman on today, and we're going to go over a lot of really phenomenal stuff that's going to talk about how to build a foundation, how you can become the person you want to become, or at least really, really far on the trail in like 20 weeks, man. And some great information, and we've got some stories for you. Just a real helpful information that will elevate you as a person, elevate you as a human being. So, 4 steps. Oh, hey, this is a new format today, man. So, like I say, we're live. I'm still trying to figure out how we're doing everything. So, but we are going to. What's that?
I'll cut to the intro and then we'll keep going.
Cut to the intro. Okay, cut to the intro.
All about him gun. It's all about
Kill that music. Kill that music. Okay, here we go. We're back. And we're totally thrilled. What I'm going to do is we're going to go over lots of stuff, and I'm going to throw this in here. We are going to have some 4 steps you can apply, and we're going to go over a little bit later. But I'm going to have Brenden introduce himself, because really he's going to introduce himself better than I can. But he's a part of a group called Reboot. So having said that, hit it, bro.
What's up? I'm Brenden Borrowman. I'm the co-founder and COO of Reboot Centers. We're focusing right now on teen drug addictions and rehabilitation to help them find their true identity and their authentic self, to kick their bad habits and where they're going in life before it goes down that path where it's kind of hard to get back from.
And that's, so when we're talking about that, you're talking about decision making, how to make decisions, and where you base your decisions on that foundation.
It's a small part of it, yeah, but it's one of the most crucial parts of our program.
Well, you think about it, and those of you who are a little bit older out there, and even teenagers and stuff, like, there was a lot of things in my life that I wish I would have understood at an early age that I could have then used throughout my entire life. And so, talking about that and creating that foundation, and we'll get into the 4 steps in a little bit, but I'm looking at my teleprompter. We got a whole teleprompter now. You imagine that? We got the teleprompter. So, everybody we make hundreds of decisions a day. Some of them we make kind of on subconscious, unconscious level, walking and moving hands and doing stuff like that. And then there are those decisions that we consciously have to make. And there are processes for that, but they're all based on something. And so, having said that, I'm getting into Reboot and talking about what I think is a wonderful organization. I just met Brenden recently, and Wendell as well. Wendell Smith, he's not here today. He couldn't make it. He's up on a mountain somewhere. But
always on a mountain.
He's always on a mountain somewhere,
always doing
right?
something.
But we got the co-founder here, so I wanted to highlight them and show how this, from what they're doing in their program, how this falls right into what my book is slowly working on here about decision making, et cetera, et cetera. So, one of the main things here is the research that I've done over the last, I don't know how many years, 10, 15 years, is what a lot of people say, I'm going to say critics or psychologists or scientists in that realm tend to say that a lot of what we do are based on biology, what we're made up of, or what our input is, or almost like a predetermined decision-making process. Like, you are this, this, and this. You come from this location. These are the stimuli or the determining factors of your environment. Therefore, your decisions will be based. It's not your fault or whatever. And I'm basically telling you different. I'm telling everybody that you can determine and create your foundation and make the decision to become the person that you want to become. But how do you do that? That's the big question. So, starting with that, let me ask you, tell me a little bit more about your program and how this falls in.
So our program we created about, I would say, 6 months ago now, out of a need to help Wendell, my co-founder, my business partner's son. He's going through a hard time. We were actually at another business meeting. During that meeting, we had to pretty much leave early. Wendell had to tell his son he couldn't come home. And we were out in the parking lot and goes, hey, can you do something for my son? Could you take him out in the mountains for 2 days, give him a boot camp, and just rip apart his identity and give him something? So I went home and really looked at what was available, and what we noticed was a gap in the treatment that's provided to our youth right now. So you have the two main factors are inpatient treatment facilities or wilderness camps. And I started doing my research and looking in these wilderness camps and looking at these inpatient centers and just seeing how it was more of a meat grinder than anything, right? You had kids coming in, they played the game, they learned the system, they pretended they got out, they were back in within 6-7 months. And the cycle continued on average. The national average is seven stints in these programs before they're considered,
So 7 times in and out.
Yeah, 7 times in and out before they're considered drug-free. And even then, you didn't fix the underlying cause. They still have their anxiety, their depression, and all the root is still there, right? It's like going to the dentist and just having them clean your teeth instead of fixing the cavity,
Sure.
right? After a while, it's going to be white, yeah, but the cavity's still there. The pain will still be
Pain's
there.
Still there, right.
So we looked at this, and we decided, hey, let's challenge the status quo and create a program that no one's ever created. We used a lot of experience from the U.S. military. They've kind of perfected identity shifts with boot camps. Over the last 200 some odd years, they've figured out how to take somebody, put them through a rigorous program, and get them to the point where they're ready to kill people. They're still trying to figure out how to bring them back, right? But we don't need to get them to that point. We need to get them to the point where the identity they've built around their drug use and their depression is now an identity that we can change into a positive, authentic self they've built out themselves instead of outlining factors, right? A lot of these teens build their factors off of their surroundings, their environment.
Sure.
And they blame a lot of that on the family they come from and everything else. And we got to show them that they can strip that away and build a solid foundation based off the center of their core, their core values and where they need to go in life, and help them find that, help them guide them to that so we can get to the underlying issues. That's the biggest thing inpatient centers fail, is because they never get to the root cause. Our wilderness program preps them to get to that point when they get to inpatient.
Well, and that's one of the things that we've talked about in the past. We talk about people and finding that your true self or your peace is something that you have to do yourself.
Yep.
Whether you gain solid knowledge or experience or whatever to create those core values, it's still something that you have to figure out yourself. You know what I mean? So we talk about military. I was immediately thinking of Dave Grossman, who's I know done a lot of psychology and stuff with training and all that kind of stuff. So when someone goes in, now let's look at the two, not your program, but on the average or regular program.
Yep.
So you going in and out 7 different times on average. What would be the first entry into a rehab location or something like that, a wilderness camp? How long would the first time they entered in, how long would they generally last? We're talking 2 months, 3 months?
It depends. Program to program, it's how much you're willing to pay, right? It's usually a charge daily thing or weekly. They usually break it down by the day. A lot of these programs don't even tell you when you're enrolling what the overall cost is. They just say, oh, it's amazing, this is the results we get.
Sure.
And they talk in what-ifs. They don't talk very specific. And so every program can range. That's a hard one to talk to because it depends on what
Sure.
what competitor are you talking about.
And I know
That's where it comes down to.
a few of these all over the country, too.
Yeah.
Small bit of experience with my buddy Scott, who you've not met Scott yet. I'm sure you'll meet Scott eventually, but he owns Strider Security and based out of Provo. And so we did a youth transport at one point where someone paid us to go basically surprise attack the son. Of course, all the legal documentation and paperwork was done. We actually had to sign over custody of the child to us to legally take this person from point A to point B. But and we did, and he was a the thing I thought was interesting. The kid was so bright, and he had all the talent in the world, but he thought he knew everything.
Don't we all?
The 16-year-old who knows everything.
That's everybody.
That
though.
was this right. That was to a point we all go through that as kids, and this is the point that he was at, but we literally threw him in a car and met him. 15 minutes later, we were in a car and drove 14 hours straight to a place in the middle of the South that was a wilderness camp. And from what I gathered, their minimum stay was a year.
Wow.
Which I heard was pretty extreme in a lot of cases.
Really extreme.
And he had a smoking habit, and so luckily Scott figured that out really quickly because we said you can't smoke, and he about went crazy, and that's when we thought we're really going to have to restrain him. But he calmed down, and Scott's like, we're going to use that as a carrot. So we said, all right, if you cooperate with us and work with us, we'll work with you. We'll let you smoke. We'll stop every few hours, and you can have a cigarette. Docile as a lamb.
Wow.
all the way till we got to the camp, and then we see you later. And the interesting thing was, I haven't been able to follow up. I don't know what happened to him, but he got out, and they immediately took him, and they did the whole entry thing with his parents. They had to be there, and they literally went on a river trip for like 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
And no cell phones, no cigarettes, no nothing. Just boom, right out
Just complete pull the plug.
right out in the deep end.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, at this point I go, wow, it's kind of cool, but I think back, and I really don't know if that's good, if that's bad, and from your research, how does that fit in different from what you guys are doing in your research?
There's a lot of education that has to go into it. You can't cold turkey anybody without telling them why you're doing it, right? There's different mind games you have to play and ways to approach things, and there's a right way and a wrong way, but it's for the individual, right? What might work for one kid's not going to work for another.
Sure.
So our first week's a lot of one-on-one, finding out what will work for the child and what strategies we need to implement. And as a mentor team, we don't call our instructors drill sergeants or anything else. They're all vets. They're either drill sergeants in the past or in the combat arms community, either special forces or attached to. And as a team, we've all talked about it, and we call them mentors because they're there to mentor. They're not there to beat the kids or to make them cry or make them piss themselves. It's a very one-on-one to feel like no matter what, they have someone they can call, right? And so you build that just like you do in basic training. You get there and you hate your drill sergeants. Oh my God, these people suck, right? And at the end, you're like, those are the best people I've ever had in my life. They saved me, and a lot of people leave basic training with that. I left basic training with that.
Interesting, because I've heard both.
Yeah.
Some people look back and it's nothing but, I guess and drill sergeants are different too. It's
It's a person, right?
We're all human to some degree, right?
Exactly.
So how when we talk about core values, and I guess one of the steps we'll talk about is, and you guys can follow these steps along as we're going, is, and I'm going to throw the first step right out there. So I want everybody to think of at least 3 people that you admire the most. Okay, just take 3 people that you admire the most, right? And then after that, so write that down, 3 people you admire the most. And then right after that, write down 3 decisions, the best decisions you've ever made. Okay, so we have 3 people you admire the most, 3 best decisions you've ever made. We'll stop there for right now while you guys do that. So speaking of that, tie that in. Do you have a story that's going to fit into we go into?
To defining myself?
Well, talk about throwing the deep end, right?
Yeah, wow, man, thank you. In front of all these people.
In front of all these people. There's like 2 watching, so you're okay. We have amazing crowd that does tune in, and most people are going to watch the show. It's a live show, but most people do watch it after because they work and they're traveling and doing all that kind of stuff. So, but in relation to that, as far as building core values, because you want to break down a personality in boot camp, that's what you guys are talking about, using some of the characteristics of military training to help define these people. So, let's just go back. Who are 3 people that or at least one or 2 that you admire the most?
Some of my most admired people, I think, would be David Montoya. He's an entrepreneur that gave me my first business when I left the military.
Nice.
Very, very inspirational person for me. He pulled me out of what I could have been going down and showed me the road that I should have been going down with being an entrepreneur and forging my own path. So he believed in me when I felt like no one else would. Nice. And my second, one of my most treasured friends, best friends, Craig Sawyer, famous Navy SEAL sniper. He's a business partner of mine.
I think that sounded familiar.
Yeah, top shot, gunny time.
Oh, okay.
He's, when I think of people I admire the most and values and core values of people that I wish I could emulate and be like, those are the 2 people that come to mind right off the top that are in my top 10 for sure.
Nice. Okay, and what are some of the traits about them that you admire or want to incorporate into your own?
So they're 2 different people, right? So you have David Montoya, who rough and tough concrete guy. He does concrete work, but he also did stand-up comedy. So he's funny as all get out, but at the same time he goes and he works hard, right?
And then, dude, I've done construction, and I don't look at the mud guys and the stand-up comedian is in the same world, man.
Going through when he put me through a personalized course of sales and business and marketing, and I've never laughed so hard in my life. It was probably the best week of my life going through that course before I went down to Florida to do a job. And then you have Craig Sawyer, who at the same time is funny, but he's one of the most morally compass-driven men I've ever met in my life. People that don't know his story, they kicked him out of, I think it was the Air Marshal Services, because he threw his leadership under the bus. They weren't doing the right thing. He knew it wasn't the right thing. He stood up against it, and he tanked his career doing the right thing. And so whenever I think of someone making the right moral choice, regardless of the actions, he's the first person that comes to mind. He's got that moral compass that it can't be compromised by anything.
And that's not an uncommon story either. I mean,
No.
we even have entire movies based on that kind of stuff, especially when you're talking in the law enforcement world, military world. Well, and focusing more on law enforcement, that's one of the biggest no-nos ever is ratting on your bros, on the brotherhood and stuff. But at the same time, sometimes those brothers just flat out need to be accountable.
Yeah.
And it's rough. And I can't tell you, we had doing the right things. We had Mark Shurtleff on the show a little while ago, and he's talking about doing certain things. He tried certain channels, didn't work, and people need to be held accountable, so it forced him to then make other decisions.
Okay.
And it's interesting to see where he's basing those things from. He's like, I try to be nice. I try to do everything according to the laws, everything according to the rules. I tried to be forgiving. I tried to play nice and be nice. No one would play ball, but someone's got to be held accountable for this, for the damage caused. And everybody that I've ever talked to about his story agrees with him and what he's doing, which is pretty interesting, especially he was a former AG at 3 terms. Okay. So very, very interesting to see his story and the platforms he's basing it on. And he had 25 or whatever years in law enforcement, and being an attorney as well. And I think he was in the JAG program. So,
wow.
Yeah, pretty. Have you know who I'm talking about, Mark?
Yeah.
Amazing guy, really was. We had him on. He's phenomenal. I was out of town, but Bo Babka guest hosted the show and did an amazing job. And I was talking to Bo today, actually. Bo's a phenomenal guy, a law enforcement guy. Okay, so now you guys have time to write down the 2 steps that we've talked about, right? 3 people you admire and 3 decisions. Okay, so basically, my next step is I want you guys to write down 20 core, plus or minus, right? 20 core values or beliefs that are that you're taking from these decisions. Why you made those decisions and characteristics of the people that you admire the most. Okay, we talked about Brenden pulled a couple of things out from people from I guess honesty is a good one.
Yeah, integrity, honesty,
big one. And you know what? They're really related, those two, but they're not exactly the same thing. So, but you'll notice a lot of people that are honest do have integrity. And
then there's people with integrity that aren't honest, though. It's the catch-22, right?
Yeah, it is an interesting term, right? Phenomenal. Okay, so what's our step? Oh, it disappeared. Okay, so thank heavens that thing's up there, man. I can't remember everything. I'm getting old, my memory's slipping. So
it's the new setup.
Part of it is I'm trying to figure everything out. Well, I was sick all last week, and so I didn't do a whole lot of anything but sleep. Oh. And then this week's already just been go like crazy, and so I'm trying to get my mind wrapped around everything, and I didn't have a moment to breathe today. In fact, I haven't even eaten today, so we'll just see how I fade here in a minute. Okay, so we talked about, let's just do a really quick recap just to help my memory out at this point. So write down 3 people you admire the most, 3 decisions the best decisions you've ever made. And then from those, we're going to create 20 plus or minus core values or beliefs and put those on a list, okay? Does that make sense? Everybody say yeah, shake your head. Give me a shake your head there. Yeah,
makes sense.
Oh yeah, okay. So our hope is, though, by the end of the show, our hope is that you will be able to take these steps and principles, apply them, and become the person that you want to become. And it seems like we're all out there trying to become people, or I wish I was this person, I wish I was that person. Well, I tell you what, I don't want to be anybody but me, and I'll tell you right now, I just don't, right? There are characteristics and there are things about other people that I wouldn't mind adopting, okay? Your military service. I think that's amazing. I didn't get to do that, and I'm not going to be able to get to do that. But there are things as I'm meeting Brenden. I have a Brenden friend. I have a Brenden friend. I have a Brendan friend. I have a Branden. I'm all
even my parents mix up. Sometimes it's fine. They name me.
Well,
right?
I'm the last of 5 Ds.
Oh.
So I get called 3 sisters sometimes too. So it is what it is. So, but as I'm getting to know Wendell as well, I've met him. I just met you 2 weeks ago, right?
3 now. It's been
3,
almost a month.
Because
it's here at ProFluent during the executive dinners, right? During the week.
I wasn't here for that one. So the last time that we talked is the first time I had actually met you.
Okay.
which was 2 weeks ago, I think. Well, tomorrow will be 2 weeks anyway, because last week I wasn't here.
Okay.
It was the week before. I think that's right, if my brain's working. But I've been talking to Wendell a couple times I guess I met him a couple of months ago. And these are phenomenal people. And so I've got them on Facebook now, and so I can see and look at their profiles and kind of get to know who they are. And there's traits and characteristics that I see in them that I look at and go, man, that's amazing. And maybe I can adopt that. Maybe I can put that on my core value list of creating the platform from which I'm making my decisions. And I can become a better person in this way or that way. So it's been kind of fun, actually, because now we're Facebook friends, right? And so,
Yeah, I don't get on Facebook much, though.
And he's Wendell, I see all sorts of pictures.
All day, every day.
I know. And
I'm on
that's
Instagram.
cool, you know.
He's on the Facebook spectrum,
Exactly.
on the Instagram spectrum.
And you can at least time in a little bit.
Yin and
now.
yang, yeah.
Exactly. There you go. So you've been, okay, so back to Reboot, right? So
Yeah.
6 months.
Mhm.
Have you actually launched the program yet? You're still kind of in a pre-launch?
So we're in all of our staff phase, right? So you're building the program exactly to protocols, to regulations.
In a nonprofit, there's a lot.
Oh,
A lot of
so
hoops.
many.
A lot of hoops.
So many hoops. We're blessed. Our CEO, we brought on Chris Esseltine. He was a big pharma lawyer, probably one of our best guides through the legal hoops. So shout out to Chris when he sees this. Yeah, right? So we've been going through our first course. We're taking in our first trainees is going to be March 1st next year. So right now we're in our build-up phase, and we're meeting with different, psychologists and doctors. Our program is built a little differently, so when they come to us, we do an initial MRI and X-ray, and then an IQ test, a standardized IQ test. And
Interesting.
through our research, through our study so far, we hope to prove in our course that we can change the way the brain thinks and have increased IQ in these teenagers.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
so
like
we're
clinical
building.
tests almost.
Yeah, exactly. So we're building it right now to make sure that all of our double blinds are right and that everything's spec to where when this rolls out, our hiccups aren't, very minimal.
Right.
And
Effective as possible.
as effective as possible. So when these kids come to us, we can really grab them and pull them out.
Well, and there will be a learning curve. There's always a learning curve.
With everything,
You
right?
just want it to be not as steep as maybe, as
Exactly.
it can be. But now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember Wendell was talking about this a few weeks ago, I want to say that, so just so you guys understand, is when Reboot, they're not going to take some kid and just chuck him to the Special Forces vets and go, kick his butt. It's not really built that way. I want to say there was correct me if I'm wrong, it was a 4-step process where the first couple were maybe
So we have 4
psychology,
steps.
clinical, and then it kind of goes into the
No,
other.
so it's
explain
actually exact opposite, right?
that. Oh, okay.
So we have step 1 is our wilderness program.
Okay.
Step 1, they come to us completely fresh. They're still 16-year-olds, 15, 16-year-olds that know everything, right?
What is your age gap? What is your limit there?
We're going all the way, drug addictions all the way down to 12, 13, right? And then we're dealing with minors all the way up to 17. We can't deal with 18 and above. That's not what we're focusing on at the moment.
Sure.
It just depends on who needs help, right?
Okay.
So they come to us fresh. First step in ripping somebody's identity away is taking away all sense of characteristics of self. So they get a uniform, they get a haircut. So externally, they've lost their external identity.
Sure.
Now we got to work on the internal identity, right? So they will then proceed through 6 weeks of what I call a soft basic. So they'll have the first week's a hell week to get them out of their mind and more into their body. So exhausting them to the point where they can actually think with their cognitive ability instead of just reacting as a teenager with their emotions.
Right.
And then through our process, there's different steps we take in those first 6 weeks, but what we're really trying to do is prep them and prep their challenge the identity they've built to ready to go to phase 2, which is our inpatient therapy, which is an inpatient center with psychologists and psychiatrists diagnosing and addressing their core issues. And most of these programs fail because these kids have been in the system in and out, and they get there, they look at the older kids that are getting ready to go home, they learn the behaviors and they learn to manipulate the system, They
Right.
pretend to play the game, they go through, the psychologist, oh, this kid's normal now, see you later, I got to go deal with my other 40 kids on my caseload. They kick them out the door, they're back with their friends on the same couch doing the same drugs, right?
Sure.
So our Camp 1 gets them ready for Phase 2, which is our inpatient. Phase 2, we deal with all those issues. During this time, the family back home has been going through family therapy, so they're changing their home and their mindsets. The kid's just not coming back to the same environment.
That's key.
Right?
Yeah.
So all this is basing off of changing identities, not just for the child, but for the family too. Because there are trigger points, either mom, dad, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, whoever is at home is a trigger point
Well,
for their
They'll
use.
get done and go back to the environment they
and
left,
then they
nothing-
fail,
everything
right?
goes back
So we
down the tube,
work
so.
through that. Then our phase 3, when they've gone through that, is humanitarian projects. We've partnered with a nonprofit that has orphanages in Africa, and they're going to go work in an orphanage for 2 weeks and learn how lucky they truly are. I don't care where you come from in America, how low end you are. You go spend 2 weeks in an orphanage without running water with these kids, and you realize they have nothing, but they're the happiest people on earth. It's that eye-opening experience every vet gets, right? We deploy, and then we come home. It's that whole new light of what I have. This is amazing. The life that I have here is so great. And it gives you that appreciation. So we give them that, and then, unfortunately, some families, the circumstance with our scholarship program, we're pulling kids out of inner cities. Some of these kids aren't going to be able to go home. The parents aren't going to be able to make the changes at home necessary. So we're starting a privatized national foster system where they can go and get placed with a family that can help them and help them succeed in life, give them opportunities they would never have before. And we're based off a system that Wendell has created with his son, Brayton, right now living with a YouTube family out of Florida, and it's getting him to his authentic self. He's performing. He's getting out of his shell. He's, the Brayton that I knew when me and Wendell did solar back in 2014 is not the Brayton that, was a year ago, and now seeing where he's at now is it's 3 different kids, but it's amazing to see Wendell show me these updates and, oh, look at Brayton did this, Brayton, seeing these updates, it's amazing to see just that one little change, what it can do being out of the home environment and on their own, right? Because it's that, I got to kind of fend for myself, but at the same time they're being taken care of, so it's that reverse psychology of, this is me, I'm doing it on my own, I'm not with my parents, but at the same time they're getting the nurture that a parent would give,
Sure.
and an ability that they would never have being in an inner city. So it's a 4-step process.
That's phenomenal. I mean, we could talk about, we were joking about a couple movies that, he's like, we'd take military tactics, and I was like, oh, just like Only the Brave,
Yeah.
and Brotherhood, or I guess Band of the Hand was the one I was thinking about. But now you really explain that, because when we do these networking events and we do, 1-minute intro about why we're here and what we're doing, man, I wasn't even close to what you just told me. So just hearing that and seeing that, the phase breakdown, I guess Wendell's wife's involved with some of that too, if I remember right and stuff. That's mind-boggling. I mean, that's just phenomenal. So think about, for those of you out there that, so if there's someone out there that knows a child that, could benefit from this, at least what's a contact number or website, or how do they...
we'll be starting admissions in the next month, the next 30 days, and the website will be rebootcenters.org. Rebootcenters.org. You can find us online.
Reboot, R-E-B-O-O-T.
And on there will be a contact form, and then by then we'll have our call center set up, and we'll be taking calls business hours Monday through Friday.
Is it based out of Utah then, or where's...
So Camp 1 that we have right now, so we have 63 square miles, give or take, with BLM land and private land that was donated up. It's the northwest side of the Great Salt Lake.
Oh.
So we have sagebrush desert, and then we have straight salt flats. And, I mean, it's as close as you can get to...
Nothing.
To hell on earth. We went out there for 3 days, and it broke me and the vets we brought out there off in the first 3 days. I mean,
wow.
During the day, temperatures around 118. So it's going to be a scorcher.
Well, there's nothing like stripping your identity and learning to go within. There's nothing, we talk about pain points.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And going through stuff, and you forget about social media, you forget about your friends, you forget about those things, when your whole point is to survive that day.
Exactly.
Or the activity that you're involved in at that moment. And you honestly don't know if you're going to collapse or what you're going to do. You just want to get through it. And it forces change.
Yep.
The pain forces the change, right? And to some degrees.
Well, look at the lobster, right? Slowly breaks his shell and grows a new one. It's all pressure. That's how humans, we adapt best when we're under pressure.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, I think...
Some crumble under pressure.
If you look at history, it's been proven.
Well, with you guys having the support system for that pressure, to kind of catch them if they fall, per se. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word or the right analogy, but I'm just looking at this whole thing, and it's mind-boggling. I really, the first time we're really talking in depth about it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of not knowing how to react to, I think, what a phenomenal idea and concept and program that I'm excited to see grow and with my buddy Scott with Strider, we've helped domestic violence victims and stuff. So we're in we're in part of the industry of helping people and trying to help people have a better life and get out of bad situations,
Yep.
which is related but not related to this. But does that make sense?
It is the arms of Reboot. I mean, we
Yeah.
have a whole 10-year plan of what industries we want to be in after we tackle this after the first 2 years. And, domestic violence is one, PTSD treatment's another,
There you go.
correctional, facilitating getting, cons to come out of prison
There you
and
go.
actually succeed instead of just be
Sure.
handing a short stick of you're on your own. And there's what's going on in our country right now therapy-wise isn't working, obviously. The program's continuing to grow. And, our support system with Reboot, with everybody that's come on board so far, I'm not going to name drop them, but, it's people that have been putting millions of dollars into these programs, and they're like, what do we do? And we had an idea that changed the status quo, and it challenges the way people look at it. But, based off the doctors we've talked to and looking at brain mapping right now, Dr. Amos, and the studies he's shown already, the proof's in the pudding already, we're just here to kind of make sure that the light gets shined on it and implement it in a wider scale than what's being done right now.
See, and that's, I can't even tell you, well, and as I'm thinking about, relating the DV with what you're doing, you talk about kids, a lot of DV, we always think about the battered wife.
Yep.
Well, and I'm going to say husband too, because that does happen, not as much, but it does. There are, in a huge way, in DV situations, children involved.
Almost always.
And a lot of those kids, it's, they're trying to figure out how to deal with it or whatever it may be. And so that might be, my brain's going crazy in the middle of the show, right? That might be something that we'll make sure that we introduce you to Scott and some of these folks because, there's definitely a connection there when dealing with some of these poor kids that have just been through situations. It's really not their fault. They're doing the best they know how and with what they're equipped with. But a program like this would give them, hopefully they can find that foundation. We're talking about creating those core values and find that foundation from which then you can base your decisions for life, right? And become the person you want to become and actually be, a contributor to society and change the world, man, right? It's all what it's all about. You guys are, in what you're doing, you're going to change the world. I mean, I'm thinking about I just look at the structure going, God, there's nothing like that. It's all about the money, and I get sick of that because, there's only so many Lindsay Lohan's going to fork over the dough, and Charlie Sheen and some of these, people out there, they're just throwing millions and millions and millions, and guess where it got them? Nowhere, right? Just throw a name out there.
Yeah, right.
No letters, no.
They're watching. I'm sorry if you
Yeah, I'd be
made you
surprised.
upset.
Really, I'd totally be surprised if you're watching, but we can blame a lot of the media for that too, or not covering things correctly. But Lindsay Lohan was here, the one in Utah.
Yeah.
She was here multiple times actually. Kind of interesting, but anyway, I'm just glad to see that you've done a gap analysis and you're filling those gaps and filling those holes with not just boot camp tactics, but real science, real psychology, and actually in a way that's going to help people, and not basically blaming it on daddy and blaming it on mommy sent them home and
Or
feed them
coddling the
meds,
kid. Yeah.
coddle them, and it's okay, you're so special, you're just great the way you are. No, you're great, you're special, you are great. That doesn't mean there's no room for improvement. We want to take you from point A to point B, and be that amazing, spectacular person that you can be, bringing that potential. But in order to do that, we've got to break everything down, find those core values, and then you can base your decisions the rest of your life on something solid, a solid foundation, okay? Makes sense, right, I guess?
Yeah.
Makes sense to a certain
I think you
degree.
did a good overview.
I was going to ask you on the psychology thing, you're talking about doing, evaluations and I can't remember what you called it with the
IQ test?
IQ test and the psychology stuff. What is there any? Are you just pulling, volunteers out, or what's the different criteria from what you're doing from a normal lay on the couch? How do you feel?
So when you do an in-depth personality test, they do a real standardized IQ. So your IQ test is an IQ test, right? It's math and equations and problem solving, and you find your natural IQ, right? So the military has been doing this for years. It's how they place what you can do in the military. And in military studies, they found if you had an IQ less than 83, it would be counterproductive to have you in the military. They couldn't teach you to do anything that wouldn't affect anything else.
That's where that came from, huh?
Yeah,
I've heard that before.
Right? So 83 was the benchmark, and what was really scary as we're jumping into this, doing our research. Back in 2000, it was 1 out of 10. right,
Wow.
was below 83, and a recent one, the most recent one that I could find for teenagers was done in 2013, so 5 years ago,
Okay.
and it was 4 out of 10. And there's so many
Wow.
factors that go into that play with, your environment teaching you as humans, we are very social. It's one of our
Sure.
key traits we've kept since being cavemen, is our ability to be adept and social in our environment, right? And we've become
Emotional. Yep.
we've become a society that doesn't teach anymore. Mom and dad don't teach. It's a computer, it's a phone, it's a tablet. They go to school and the teacher doesn't teach. It's a PowerPoint, it's a video, it's a packet, it's online schooling. It's not personal anymore.
Yeah.
And we as humans haven't been able to evolve to get the right dopamine effects and the right brain mapping to be able to take that knowledge in and utilize it the right way. So if you looked at test scores from the 60s and 70s, kids are smarter than they are now. And you've heard generation after generation say people are getting dumber and dumber. The movie Idiocracy is becoming pretty true in our culture now today of how dumb people can be, but we're hoping that removing certain elements, electronics and white screens, and removing social dynamics that are in society now,
Right.
and making these kids form units and having a tribe and having to utilize each other to get tasks done, which they're not doing anymore. You see teenagers sitting around, they're texting each other, but they sit right next to each other, not talking. They're texting.
Mind-boggling.
Changing their mindset and changing these tools in tests so far have proven that it increases in IQ. We want to see what it does on a dramatic effect. So they're with us for, I think, almost 6 months. We want to know from our 6 months of having them, what's changed? How dramatically has it changed? Can we change the way the brain's healing? Can we change the way they think? Can we create new neural pathways? Can we create new social pathways of how they learn? And the whole goal of this is to make these kids become leaders and successful in life, right? Every year we lose more and more leaders in the corporate world because people don't have the skills or the mindset to be a natural leader in that environment. They may be an amazing coder and create a tech company, but if they can't be a solid leader, that tech company goes under.
Right.
You see startup after startup fail. And so our goal is to help these kids not only get off drugs, but create a life that benefits society as a whole. Right? They become our new leaders. They become our new politicians and
leaders, problem
corporate
solve.
leaders.
You're
right?
talking about the problem solving, using those, the little graces. I always think of Poirot, F.
Yeah.
Poirot, the little graces. But that's the thing. Like my wife works in one of the schools, the school district down in Utah Valley, and that's one of the main things she has to do when they're dealing with kids from babies to 4, 5, 6 or whatever, is she
Yeah.
always has to problem solve, and it's something that is just not being, like you said, it's not being done.
Well, it's a socially taught skill.
Yeah,
And if you're not learning it from your social environment, who are you going to learn it from?
and we're talking about problem solving, not the problem of I got to kill 80 zombies to move to the next level. That's not problem solving.
No.
That's just totally different, right? Psychology. I was thinking Dave Grossman on that one too, right?
Yeah.
Stop teaching our kids to kill, and his new the last book he just came out with was Assassination Generation.
Yep.
Phenomenal stuff. The guys, I love Grossman. He's amazing. Okay, so let's go back and let's do a little recap on there. Always giving me cues up there. Okay, so we're doing a recap here. We're talking about, so let's go back to the steps. So the first step was write down 3 people that you admire the most, then 3 decisions that, the best decisions you've ever made, and then from those you want to take characteristics to create a list of 20, give or take, of core values, right? You're going to build your own core values right there, okay? Okay, and then what's next? Okay, so then what you're going to do is now that you have that, and you might want to edit that list. You might have to take that and redo it, kind of like we talked about the program. I guarantee they're going to be thinking about their core values and building on who they are, but that does get edited. And if you grow and you get older with years and years, it can modify and change. That's okay. But for now, all right, essentially what we're going to do is now that you've got that list and go through and edit that list. And if it's, if you got 40, then bring it down to 20. You know what I mean? And go through. Sometimes you might have things, characteristics that are very similar or could be the same thing maybe. Okay, so get your list to be right about 20. And then set a goal so quantifiably you're going to pick one of those and you're going to work on that for 1 week. So pick one trait, work on it for 1 week, every single day for that week. Okay, put that quantifiable goal down. I will be honest to every single person I talk to, whatever it may be, and then you work through each one of those for 20 weeks. And after those 20 weeks, you should find definite changes. Go back, revisit your list, revisit the things that you wrote down, revisit the people that you admire, and then start again and start doing it again. Through this process of breaking it down and redoing it, kind of like what Reboot's talking about, you will start to become the person that you want to become. And if you know, and part of this process is write down the goal. Who do I want to be? Where do I want to be? How do I get there? Well, you've got to have a platform from which you then take the leap of faith. And that's what this is building that platform. You have to base decisions on something. It has to come from somewhere. So this platform is where you base that. And that's what I wanted to have Brenden on with Reboot, because that's what they're basically doing, especially with the youth who need it the most, right? Well, we all need it, but need it the most because they have their whole lives ahead of them. I'm in my mid-40s, man. I got 40-something years. Yeah, wait, goodbye in the past, right? So I'm looking at what I'm going to do the next 40 years, right? I think that's a country song.
Is
anyway.
it? It could be. You're just missing the
I'm
dog and
thinking
the,
Tim
the
McGraw somewhere,
ex-girlfriend.
right? Play the record backwards, get all my stuff back. So, but that's the important thing. And so with him in his youth, and that's one of the methods of breaking them down and restarting, so that they have their entire life to have that foundation to make those core decisions and those important decisions, like you said, to be successful. Because we all want to be successful.
Yeah.
And people define success, and I've literally heard dozens and dozens of ways that people define success, and that's cool, right? You don't have to be rich to be successful. You can be successful in other ways, right? My father, very successful in a lot of ways, and maybe unsuccessful in other ways. But you got to depend on which one, decide which one you're going to focus on, and move forward, right? Past is the past. Okay, let's make some corrections. Let's move forward. Okay. Good. Anything
I'll add
else?
to it, yeah.
Add to it, man. Absolutely.
So if you're focusing on your goals, you want it to be quantifiable. One of my biggest piece of advice I can give people is something that was imparted on me, is make sure it's achievable, right? You want the small wins. You don't want to focus on negative.
Yeah.
So if you have a goal, and I want to run 5K, so one of your things is I want to be healthy, of your goals, right? You wrote down healthy, and you want to run a 5K. That's the goal you set. Well, you can't just wake up tomorrow and go run a 5K. So set achievable goals. I'm going to tie my shoes, put on my gym equipment, and walk around the block tomorrow. Yep. That's my step one. You can achieve that, right? So you wake up, you do it, and you have a win. And start focusing on the positive when it becomes addictive. You get the hit of dopamine. Every time you make a checklist and you put down a goal, if it's achievable and it's small, and you hit that check, boom, I did it. It's that hit of dopamine, right? And after a while, that becomes addictive. Whereas I set a goal that's not achievable. I want to go run a 5K, and I wake up and I go run 2 out of the 5K. Instead of celebrating I ran 2 of the 5, I'm down on myself, and I start to get negative, and I get stuck in the thought train of negative, right? Because I'm focusing on the 3 I missed, not the 2 I hit.
Right.
So when you're making these goals, make them quantifiable. If you're going to set your goals to be more honest and stuff, let's say you have a lying problem, you want to be more honest with people in your life. Whether you're an adult and you're lying to your spouse, or you're a kid, you're lying to your parents, whatever it may be, if that's your issue, set a quantifiable goal of, I'm not going to lie about this one thing today. And you slowly expand that and get your small wins, and as you're working on that, like you said, it's a 20-week process on average. As they're slowly doing this and the small wins start to build up, it starts to rewire your neural pathways from what it was before. And you create that new habit in your brain, essentially, right? You're creating a new neural pathway. Not essentially, it is.
Exactly.
You're creating that new neural pathway that then becomes habit, right? Creating habits and breaking old habits. It's not done overnight. And so this isn't going to be done overnight. You're not going to make your list. I'm going to do all this. I'm going to, follow all these gurus and do all these things and become someone better in a week. It's a path. It's a journey you have to take, but you got to take it in steps. So find your goal. Find you're one of the 20, traits, focus on it, and set your quantifiable, achievable goals, and slowly work on it. This isn't going to be fixed in a day. It's going to take you your journey.
It's a marathon, man. I mean, I went back to school after 12 years of being out working in the world, the life, a school of hard knocks, whatever you want to call it. People have different names. So I decided to go back and get my degree. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, they say, how long did it take you? And I say, it took me 11 years. 11 years. And they said, do you have a doctorate? No. Just 11 years. But 11 years is going to go by anyway.
Yep.
You might as well, at the end of 11 years, have something to show for it. Boom, there you go. So thanks tons, man. We're running out of time, but really appreciate you taking the time to come out.
Yeah, no problem.
And talk about this stuff and how your program works. It's absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I love it. So if you guys have questions, you can go ahead and put questions on here. Like the show, like the page especially. We're on Instagram as well, WWBS TV on Instagram, as well as, of course, you're here on Facebook. So phenomenal. So Reboot, that's the program. We got Wendell, he wasn't here today, and Brenden, the founders, and just amazing stuff. And remember the 4 steps we talked about as far as changing who you want to be. The hope is that 20 weeks you can be the person, becoming the person you want to be. Simple 4 steps, man. It's just a marathon, but let's run it together, right? Rock and roll. Cool. Any last 2 seconds?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Cool.
A lot of questions.
Thanks, everybody. Hopefully we'll get a lot of questions. But thanks, everybody. WWBS TV. What would Bubba say? We appreciate everybody, and we will see you next week.
See you.